Once again, it's time for the weekly Covrprice top 10 list. We'll break it down. Some old faces coming back, and some new interesting titles based on recent news. All that and more up next on this video from Bronzeville Comics. Hello, panelologists. This is Jim from Bronzeville Comics coming to you with another video. Before we get started, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, notification bell, check out the description, Instagram, whatnot, eBay, my email. Lots to check out there. So I just want to dive right into this Covrprice top 10 list. It is pretty interesting. Some new books, some old books. And as has been the case for the last few weeks, and I think it's kind of interesting, news has been driven, and the comic market is driven by the X-Men 97 series. Full disclosure, my daughter and I are still trying to get through the original series before we get to X-Men 97. So I'm going to avoid the spoilers. So it's spoiler free here. But there's something going on, I'm sure, based on the top 10 list. So let's just jump right into it at number 10. And returning to the list at number 10 is Ultimate Black Panther #1, part of the new Ultimate Universe, first appearance of the Black Panther verse 6160. And as we can see, high grades of this book are going in the $30 range, and 9.8s are topping out at about $80, which is interesting this early in the game when there's the supply is still increasing as people are sending that book in. I just want to take a look at variants. Looks like the third print version. Oh, and here we have a version 1 in 100, which is very expensive. Again, I'm not sure how well that will hold its value as a $300 sale of a 9.8. Let's just take a quick look at the list. We now have 284 on the census, or now it just increased by 37. 90% of them are 9.8s. And again, the 9.8s are topping out at about, and we have this steady decrease. The first ones to market, which were just 2 months ago, $135. And now it's down to look at this, a 48, a 67, a 31 down here. So this book is really struggling to hold value in a 9.8 as this number increases. And that's what I think we have to be careful of when we're looking at brand new books and the 9.8s first start coming to market. So just be aware of that when you're playing the 9.8 game. It looks, if you get it raw, get it slabbed, even then, I mean, look at this sale, $31, break even, right? Essentially break even, the price of the book and the price of the slab. So, you know, if you want to preserve it, you want to save it, that's fine. But again, it doesn't seem to be really accruing in value, but a lot of people want it as I think readers are getting interested in the story. And again, that's good for the future of the hobby as people want to read stories. That is what drives the hobby. Variant covers, the artwork is all cool, but what really brings people into the first part to begin with are the stories. Let's go to another old friend at number 9, Dazzler #1, the first appearance of Dazzler. Not the first appearance of Dazzler, her first issue of her own series. High grades, $20, 9.8s, 150, 175. Let's take a look at the Go Collect data. That was we could see there were two, a raw and a slab 9.8, but 9.8s. And we could see this book didn't get much affected by the boom. Right? In May, it went up to 2021. It's more affected by the Swift effect. But notice, since November, it has been coming down and down and down and down. And we do have a little bit of an uptick here. I don't think there's any new information about it. The Taylor Swift Dazzler rumor has to be one of the most popular MCU rumors since 3 Spiderman and No Way Home appeared. This past week didn't see any additional rumors for Swift. However, just this past Monday, director Sean Levy had an interview and was asked about Swift's appearance in the film. Of course, the answer was as ambiguous as they came. The director replied with, "The proliferation of rumors about who is and isn't in this movie is fabulous because no one will ever know the truth until July 26th. take that as you will, but this vague reply will likely spark another fire under the rumor, sending this book soaring again in popularity. Let's take another look at the book in terms of the census count. 2,000 and a quarter of them are 9.8. So there is a 9.9, and I don't think that has ever been sold. So that's interesting. And a 9.9 is not easy on a book from 1981. Also, remember, Dazzler was direct only. There was no newsstand. It was sold only through direct markets. And it was really marketed heavily for that. And I think at the time it got myself, my cousin, we would have been, that came out in February of 81. So I'm 14 years old. That got us to sign up for an LCS's pull list, essentially. And that is one of the legacies of this book. Moving along, another old friend, Ultimate Spider-Man #1. And we can see books raw, $100 range up to $120, which is a lot considering we're seeing maybe a little bit of a softening. It's an 8.5 sold for $140. What is going on there? But we can see, look at, again, this is similar to the Black Panther, right? Comes out at 210. And again, the vertical axis here is just from 190 to 220. It's not from 0. So that's something to keep in mind. Our statistics lesson of the day is how to mislead with statistics. And this is a somewhat misleading graph, right? It's, this is just a $10 difference from the bottom here to 210. So it went like our points are 210, 212, and 197, right? So not a precipitous drop, but got a 168 going at auction. But auctions, again, at 222. There is still demand for this book. Now, one thing that's interesting now, there are 399s on the census. I believe this is the most recent. Yep, 399s on the census. And one signature series. That's interesting. So, yeah, there's still, 92.2% are 9/8 of this book. Let's go to let's see if there's anything that we have to add about this. At number 8, the book fell off the top 10 list last week after being a long reigning member of the hot sellers. This week, the book returns and overtakes Ultimate Black Panther #1. Spider-Man is Marvel's most popular hero, and it makes sense that his new Ultimate debut would hit high numbers consistently. Again, people, I think, want to read this book. Let's go to number 7. An oldie, Silver Surfer #1 from 1968. Again, raws, it's going to depend on condition. Let's look at Go Collect for the most commonly traded, which is the 7.0. Again, this was a book. It's always been a strong key. No question about that. A #1 for a popular hero. And this run, only 18 issues, is very collectible. To get for a Silver Age run, to get all 18 issues is doable. There are some big ones. 3, 4, and this one are huge. But again, with you can probably get the whole run in decent condition for maybe $2,000. So, if you're hunting right. So then it went up, and then it jumps during the boom, right? Up to 2,300, then another peak here at 2,575. And it's come down, but it's kind of, I don't think, and I'd have to compare the numbers. It doesn't seem as though the drop has been as steep as the drop on Fantastic 448, his first appearance. Now, that is a little bit of a different book because there was a warehouse find of Fantastic 448. This is also a difficult book in grade, black cover, square bound. So it can easily incur damage along the spine, including very easily get spine splits. You have stapled protrusion, all that sort of thing. So we can see it's settling in at about $1,200 in a 7.0. And that's been pretty consistent this month. It's up a little bit from where it was earlier in the year, and 4 copies sold. You have to go the span of 3 months. 4 copies sold in 10 days. You have to go 3 months to find the previous 4 copies sold. And a lot of this, I don't know if people are speccing or panicking and getting rid of it because of the news in the Fantastic Four movie. The announcement of Silver Surfer's casting has cast a strong divide among the fandom. Marvel cast Julia Garner, Bal, and it was not the Silver Surfer that fans were expecting. Still, fans took to the aftermarket for Silver Surfer comics, stocking up on Norrin Radd's key books. The details, the origin of the Silver Surfer, and is also one of the most iconic covers of the character. As fans wait for more news on the Fantastic Four movie, many are holding their breath, thinking that Bal will be used as a transition to a Norrin Radd storyline. I concur. This also is the first appearance of Bal because it tells his story. And the interesting part of the Silver Surfer origin story is basically he sacrifices himself to become a herald to save Bal and save his planet. So Marvel doesn't usually adapt the storylines directly from the comics. They take notes from the comics. They take beats from the comics and create their own narrative. And that was working for many years. I think they're going to get back to that. I do think we're going to see Nora and Rad. And if we do see a Nora and Rad casting, I expect this book and other Surfer keys to get very hot. And if we do see a Nora and Rad casting, then probably the cover price top 10 that week will be full of Silver Surfer. Let us go to number 6. And it's X-Men Annual number 14. Now, I'm going to skip the narrative on here because I don't want any spoilers. This is the first full appearance of Gambit out of continuity, or I guess, well, out of reading order, let's say. You should have read 266 before you read Annual 14. Anyway, a great Art Adams cover, but Gambit is not featured on the cover. And, it's only $178, approximately fair market value in a 9.8, about $50 for a raw. Again, this is a square bound. You don't have staple protrusion with this book, but it's very easy, if it's attempted to be pressed and it's pressed wrong for the glue to get all messed up. But here we see, right, this book spiked hard during the boom, up to $670 in June of 2021, and has been on the decline ever since. And right now, we're, settling in at around the $175 mark for this book in a 9.8. There are 6,000 copies. There's 699s. 25% of the books are 9.8s. So again, this is a book from 1990. You'd kind of expect that. Next on the list, X-Men 24, this classic Andy Kubert cover. I don't want to know why it's been hot, but look at this. This is interesting. This book in a 9.8 is more than X-Men Annual 14. And it's not a first appearance. It's an iconic cover. So let's take a look. But look at this. I mean, this price, it did spike up to $282, and then it was holding in the, the $125, $150 range. And then all of a sudden it went $69 sale, and bam, it's up to $233, $262 sale on April 14th. Again, I'm avoiding spoilers. I'm not going to speculate it was happened. I don't think it was good. Let's move right along. And up, Bal Earth X12. This is a book that you have to find it. It's buried in back issue bins. It's been in dollar bins forever. Even though it's an Alex Ross book, its first cover appearance and one-page cameo appearance of Bal as the Silver Surfer. And look at this book. It's getting up to $70, $80 for a high-grade raw. I think it was on the list last week, and there were only 2 universals. There were 3 signatures, and it is an Alex Ross book, so that kind of makes sense. Let's see if any have been added to the census as I refresh the page, and no, it's still 2 universal, and the last one sold was $41 back in 2023. I expect this number to increase very quickly. Probably by next week, if not the week after, if this book remains on the hot list, we're going to see this number pop, because I'm sure there are collectors that, just grabbed a copy. It's from 2000. So there are, I'm sure, people who have this in their boxes, long boxes, short boxes, wherever. If they're able to access it, decent chance of it being in high enough grade to be a contender. And, there are going to be some of them that are going to be sent in. So let's take a look at the news as we skip past the X-Men stuff. I want to avoid. Well, this book, I think, is... Oh. What? They do have the wrong narrative there. So I'm going to just skip that entirely. Go to the next book on the list, which is number 3, I'm sorry. Uncanny X-Men 266. First cover appearance of Gambit. First chronological story appearance of Gambit. This was supposed to come out earlier. And we look at that book at a 9.8 at $140. A 9.8 of this book of the annual is his first appearance. This is a book people want. The cover's iconic. You gotta shell out, well over $100 to get a high grade copy. But if you get 9.8, it's a $700 book. And even like a 7.0 is selling for $100. Let's take a look at this on Go Collect, and we can see there are 15.99s. That's interesting. Again, 1990 book, 21,000 on the census. Let's compare. I mean, it's the supply and demand is fascinating because there's only just shy of 6,000 on the census. So like 3.5 times as many 266s have been graded as annual 14s. This is the book collectors want. It doesn't matter what you or I may think about first appearance. I consider this his first appearance, even though the other one was on the newsstands first. This is supposed to be in the storyline first. And we could see, this book, always a key, worth several hundred. Comic Boom jumped it up to almost $1,200. And the decline has been steady but slow. And it is nowhere near its pre-pandemic numbers. Like pre-pandemic, December 2020, 563, it's still well above that by over $100. And look, a recent sale of $750, hovering around $700 recently. We don't have any news, but I would suspect that we're going to see this character in live action at some point, and that's going to make this book even hotter. If the animated series is really driving the popularity of these books, I think the comic book community, the people who are buying these books for whatever reason, whether it's speculation or just a connection to what they're watching, and they want the book and it's bringing back childhood memories, whatever the reason, it's working with X-Men 97. Doesn't always work with animated series. Let's take a look at number 2. And now we're going to get into some recent stuff. And number 2 is Transformers number 1. This recent one that's part of the Energon universe. And we can see sales around the $20 mark, but we have 9.9s going for $300 and 9.8s about $70. Let's take a look at the Go Collect of the 9.8s. And again, a little bit misleading on the horizontal axis. Here it goes from 60 to 100. But, that's where it's been in the $70 to $80 range pretty consistently, right? There are 469 on the census. Only like a handful are below 9.8. That's who will be submitting this book. Transformers Rise of the Beast was thought to be the big launch movie for the Hasbro Cinematic Universe. Due to disappointing box office returns, many fans thought the future plans for the universe were scrapped. Last week at CinemaCon 2024, Paramount announced that they will move forward with the Transformers G.I. Joe crossover movie. This is a huge announcement after hitting radio silence for the past year, and also brings newfound attention to the book that takes place in the shared universe known as Energon. So, yeah. These Energon books are very popular with readers, especially like the 80s kids who fondly remember Transformers and G.I. Joe. I wasn't really into those IPs because I was like high school, college age by that time, and I was not watching Saturday morning cartoons. It wasn't really a property aimed at me. So let's go to number 1, and it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin. It was interesting. I was just talking to a coworker who is a comic book collector and a reader. And he was talking about the storyline. Like, he was a big Turtles guy, and he was really into the storyline. And I was like, they're making a movie. So we can see you're going to have to spend over $100 to get a high-grade raw copy. And, this book has 10s and 9.9s. It's a square bound. It is a large format book. And I wonder if the sales have any dependency on the case. The newer magazine size cases from CGC are much more well liked than the older ones, but we can see like 10%, right? 10% of the universal population is a 9.9 or a 10, and another 84%, 85%, which is going to make 95% of the universal copies are 9.8 or better. So we could see this book. This book has been strong. It's been $150-ish book all along, and now it just jumped up to $275. And stupid me, I sold my copy that I got, in a collection for a lot less than that. I think I sold it for like $150, a few months ago. Maybe I got 200 for it. I don't even remember. Now I'm feeling upset about it. But I did fine. I'm not going to worry about that. So let's go to the news on this. Paramount came in hot with announcing 2 huge movie properties at CinemaCon 2024. The first was the Transformers G.I. Joe, which was already a surprise enough. The next announcement blew away the fandom, a live adaptation of The Last Ronin. Not only that, but the film will be rated R and will reportedly be bloody. For those that don't know, The Last Ronin is a dark dystopian future of the TMNT series where only one turtle has survived. The book is tragic and full of wrath. The series ends on a hopeful note, but it's too early to tell whether the movie will end with the same cliffhanger. So again, Turtles, hugely popular IP. It started out dark and gritty, then it transformed into a Saturday morning show, and the early movies much more kid friendly. Even the recent iterations have been very kid friendly, but they kind of went back to their origins here. Let's take a look at the runners up, numbers 11 through 20. Number 11, Star Wars Thrawn Alliances, the EM Gist 1 in 25. A Thrawn based. Then The Last Ronin, alternate cover by Kevin Eastman. ASM 300, of course, always a popular book. The Dave Stevens Effect. If you haven't seen the documentary on Prime, it's well worth it. World of Wood, number 1. Right. And again, this is from Eclipse Comics. The Arthur Adams 1 in 25 for Incredible Hulk 11. And that's kind of interesting. Usually Art Adams gets more money for the pretty girls. Geiger, which we talked about last week, the first appearance of Redcoat, it comes in at number 16. Another Dave Stevens at number 17, Alien Worlds, this one from Pacific Comics. Not a lot of David Stevens work. He did maybe one. Did he do more than one cover for DC? He did an Elvira cover, correct? And he did some interiors on Who's Who. But not a lot of work for the big companies. It was all these indies in the 80s. The Kamikos, the what was the other? Blackstone. Uncanny X-Men 221, first appearance of Mr. Sinister, continues to be hot in anticipation of what's going on with the Deadpool movie and Cassandra Nova. Again, she's rumored to be the villain. We don't have that. And then another Alien Worlds Dave Stevens cover coming in at number 20. So that's your top 10 list. Again, a lot of it driven by news. The X-Men 97 series is kind of on its own right now in terms of new comic book related media that's out there right now. And of course, the news about the Energon universe, the Turtles movie, really pushing, and then the Silver Surfer news as well. I expect this summer we're going to get some big time news from both Marvel and DC. Marvel's been kind of circling the wagons, trying to figure out what just a few leaks. But I think leading up to Deadpool, there's going to be a lot of excitement. The X-Men 97 is creating excitement, at least within the fan base, as we can see by these sales here. And, I expect that at some point this summer, early fall at the latest, we're going to see Kevin Feige somewhere with his baseball cap on and rolling out most of the next phase in terms of movies and TV projects. And James Gunn, is going to probably be doing the same with DC. He only announced half of Chapter 1, still a lot of things to fill in, and still a ton of casting. Most of those movies that were announced, Brave and the Bold, the Batman movie hasn't been cast. Booster Gold hasn't been cast. And the Green Lanterns, the Lanterns TV series has not been cast. So still a lot of room for excitement about those characters. One thing about DC compared to Marvel is that so many of the characters premiered in the Golden Age, and their books are exceedingly expensive and really hard to find. So anyway, I'd like to thank you for stopping by. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. In the meantime, you can take a look at a couple of my other videos here. And this is Jim saying until next time, enjoy your comics.